Okay, we are gathered here today as a society, as a culture, and truly as a people to mourn the loss of something that was amazing. We're here to celebrate and recognize how our world changed 11 years ago to the day by losing something such a part of the culture and a lot of people's lives as preteens and young adults, specifically primarily young girls and young adult women. And because of such drastic change, I thought, what better way than to shine a light on such a life altering moment such as this, which is Zayn left One Direction 11 years ago to the day, March 25th, 2015. My life had changed for what I didn't even know at the time, but for the worse. I actually sit up here and mourn this day every single year that passes because truly I didn't think things could get any worse for the time, yet here we are. When I was we all know where we were, and I'm going to explain my story when I had a piece of me leave my body. It was a brisk spring day. I was in the 7th grade. I was in my 6th block, 6th period social studies class with my bald-headed, big-bearded social studies teacher letting us work on our projects. I was streaming One Direction 4, and all of a sudden, someone says, Zayn left One Direction. I looked around frantically, from my left to my right, in front of me and behind me, looking for where this voice came from. I then say, this can't be true. I run to Google. I am typing faster than the speed of light. I look at the headlines. One Direction band member Zayn Malik announces his departure from the band. Zayn Malik leaving One Direction. Breaking. Singer Zayn Malik has decided to step away from One Direction. I kid you not, I began to cry right there on the spot. You would think somebody shot my grandmother. And honestly, that's what it felt like. By this point, these boys had been a part of my life for almost half a decade of my early pre-teenagedom. And when I got the news that Zayn left One Direction, I almost couldn't believe it. And as the weeks and months went on, I specifically remember going on spring break to Disney a few weeks after that with me, my cousin, and my older sister, and my mom, my younger sister. We went girls trip, bow. That sadness turned into resentment because at this time, I wasn't really active on Twitter, so I didn't see any issues or statements or why he left. I kind of just started going through the 7 stages of grief. First, it was denial. No, it was not a river in Egypt. I went through the 7 stages of grief, and I got to the point of my grief process where it turned into resentment because I was in the 7th grade. I was 11. Was I 11? No, hell no. 2015 minus 2. I was 13. Was 13. I was probably 12, about to turn 13 that summer. My resentment began to boil. And I remember there was a picture of me at Epcot looking crazy on a ride. I was not ready for my glam bot. And my cousin and sister and I memeified this photo and made endless jokes about Zayn leaving One Direction with that Disney World delirium that you get when you're waiting to take a shower post going to the amusement park. Now, as time went on, it's now been 11 years. I'm 23, going to be 24 in 2 months now. And my resentment towards Mr. Malik, Zayn himself, face card, literally chiseled, printed, painted by God himself. All those negative feelings are gone and filled with nothing but understanding. And I have a love and appreciation and respect for what he did, because at the end of the day, you have to put you first, and that's exactly what he did. Did it suck in the moment? 100%. Do I understand now that I'm officially older than the boys were, majority of them, when they were in One Direction? Yes. Do I fully understand why Zayn had to take a step back now that I am older than how old they were when they were in the... Yes. And honestly, like I said before, I didn't think things could get any worse, but I cannot remember a time where life was as good as it was when One Direction was together. And I try to often think about the common denominator of this revelation that I constantly have about how my life peaked when One Direction was a band. I feel like I was happiest when One Direction was a band. I wonder why that is. It's not because I was a preteen, because I was in middle school. That's like the worst time in anybody's life. Nobody wants to be a middle schooler. I was chopped. I was making my stupid little videos online. My career hadn't picked up yet. I had good grades. I had good friendships, and I never was able to put my finger on exactly what made life so great for me to believe that I peaked emotionally, intelligently, mentally when One Direction was together. And then I found it. It's because I was a fangirl. Fangirling, in my opinion, a lost art, a lost media, a lost way of life that we have not seen as strong and loud and normal to an extent since One Direction. Walk with me. If you aren't aware of what, this whole debacle is about, One Direction was together for not even, 5 years. They were together for 5 years, 5 albums in 5 years. Jesus. Working, overworked, management, still have beef. And over those 5 years, they gained a worldwide amount of fame because they had the looks. Some of them didn't have the vocals. They definitely did it on X Factor. They had the looks, they had the charisma, they had the personality. And that is what the girls loved. Personality. Predominantly teenage girl audience. We were running up a bill, babes. CDs, DVDs, t-shirts, magazines, merch, all of the above and then some, not even including concert tickets, seeing several shows, signings, seeing them out in public, investing time, Twitter group chats, just so you can figure out where the boys are going to be next. We used to be a society. And now here we are, 11 years later, and I still have not recovered from what feels like the happiest I'd ever been in my life, because I am no longer fangirling in ways that I have fangirled before. If this is your first time here, welcome to the Predictably Unpredictable Podcast. I am your host, Aliyah Simone, and the only thing that's predictable about this podcast is that it's unpredictable. If you were to tell me last week I was going to wear a somewhat of a funeral outfit, the closest thing I could get to one, within the span of 30 minutes before filming this, so I can really mourn and unpack my relationship and society's relationship with fangirling. Like, if you told me that 6 months ago, I would not believe you. Yet, here we are, full all black attire, Stuart Little sunglasses, tiny little oval sunglasses. Here I am mourning to the fullest capability. Every year that March comes around, it's March Madness, yes, but more importantly, everybody knows March 25th to be the day that Zayn left One Direction. And that's because the culture shifted that day. I am not a big conspiracy theorist. That's just not really my game. I'm not familiar with that ball. But something in my spirit and soul genuinely shifted that day. If you were to ask me, Aliyah, do you think the timeline shifted when Zayn left One Direction? Do you think Earth ended up on another axis? I would 100% tell you yes, because things have never been the same. The year was 2015. People were still wearing skinny jeans, loose t-shirts, big brimmed fedoras. We just got off a high of bandana Harry Styles. We're still hung up on Zayn in Japan. People are still trying to tell us that Harry's the best singer and the cutest one in One Direction, and Zayn's right there. Vine was still a thing. And then we didn't even know that within the coming months and the turn of the year as we entered 2016, we would get put into one of the most culturally relevant years in a lot of people's lives. Going from 2015 and Zayn leaving One Direction to Black Beatles and wearing a full beat eye makeup look to high school within the span of less than 2 years was a lot. And I really think somebody tried to place 2016 after 2015 to try to mask the fact that Zayn left One Direction, but they did not fool me, because I still emotionally, when it comes to talking about them boys, am that 7th grader in her 6th block social studies class, hearing the news and audibly and verbally and just hearing her heart break. When it comes to One Direction, I don't play about them boys. I don't play about them boys. To this day, current occupation, directioner. Some say content creator, some say influencer. I say full-time Direction supporter, full-time One Direction fangirl. And when you use the term fangirl, a certain stigmatism comes up when you use it. And usually when people use it, it's like a crazed fan who's off their rocker, who literally just gives their all to somebody that they love, when in reality, although very true for some, but not all of us, fangirling was something that gave us something to look forward to. It was a hobby. Dare I say it was a way of life. Now, I am in no way, shape, or form somebody who can speak too much on internet safety. I was not very present on much social media outside of YouTube and Instagram. So when it came to Twitter and stuff, I do not know what happened over there, but I know the girls were crazy, and we're going to talk about it, because I feel like somehow Zayn leaving One Direction started this movement to where people started to think that being a fangirl wasn't fun anymore. And how I'm going to tie that into our attachment issues and our nonchalance as a generation, crazy stretch, but I literally can make anything connect, and we're going to do that today. Let's talk about it. Welcome to Predictably Unpredictable. So, to get the full scope as to what I'm talking about, if you aren't aware, fangirl is a term that people use to differentiate people who are casual fans and big fans. Before there was the stan, which I think is a step above fangirl. It's like casual fan at the bottom, fangirl's in the middle, stan is at the top. A fangirl can be defined as somebody who gives into their fandom and interest / group, individual, artist, whatever that may look like. They give their time, money, and there's an emotional transaction that happens. They're giving time, money, and emotion. And the reason that a fangirl differentiates from the casual viewer is because casual viewers are not that invested within said artist or figure's life. They're just a casual person. Prime example, a casual viewer went to go see Sinners 2025 one time in theaters with the regular movie screening. But a fangirl saw Sinners 3 times in IMAX all 3 times, even went to a 70 millimeter theater / screening to see Sinners, and also has watched Ryan Coogler's entire discography. Not discography, film catalog. Hello? So you see the difference. There's a lot more being invested. There's a lot more devotion. That's the word. It's a lifestyle of devotion. People give up a lot to support their faves, right? And when it came to the whole One Direction bit, things got out of hand very quickly because the way the boys rose to fame was honestly so sporadic and random, and it happened all at once. Everything everywhere all at once. That was One Direction, literally. So when you essentially turn into an seemingly overnight sensation and world-renowned celebrity at the ripe ages at like 18, 19, knowing that you are attracting mainly teenage girls, you know what type of antics you're getting into. You know it. Because you know what? Fangirling is not a new concept. I was actually talking to my mom about this earlier on the phone. I'm like, yeah, I'm doing a podcast episode on fangirling, so I feel like we don't really have that type of normalcy of fangirling culture anymore. And my mom grew up around Jackson 5, New Edition, and things like that. And she was telling me, like, yeah, like, me and your aunt we had a crazy Jackson 5 phase and the New Edition phase, and everybody in the friend group would say which New Edition boy was theirs / their favorite, and don't let anybody have the same favorite boy as you because now it's a problem. You know what I'm saying? And knowing that we went from something so naive and wholesome to something that is grasping for dear life. And when I say it's grasping for dear life, I'm not saying fangirling as an art is completely gone. I just feel like it's a little bit forgotten as to what it's supposed to be. And I think when it comes to things / entities, when it comes to the music world, I feel like we don't have that anymore because we have a lack of people that we can support and really fangirl over. Growing up, I had Justin Bieber. Well, first it was the Jonas Brothers. That's number one. Then we had Justin Bieber, very close timelines. Then we had a plethora, like a big boom of boy bands. Mindless Behavior, One Direction. What was the other group? The Wanted. We had All-Star Weekend. You could not escape these groups and these teenage girls who wanted all of them at the same time. It was insane the amount of coverage that boy bands had in the early 2010s / late 2000s. It was nasty. And this is not a new concept. Like I said, we had Jackson 5, we had NSYNC, we had New Edition, and then of course we had our like solo artists as well. But it was something about those boy bands that just made it feel like it was taken to another level, and I will never understand how they did it. It was nasty. It was nasty. Now, the title of this, the working title for this right now, is The Forgotten Art of Fangirling. If I change that title, mind your business, for one. Number two, probably is going to do better for engagement. Let me know which title you like better, if it's not that one. When I say we have lost the art of fangirling, I mean that to an extent. Like I said, there's probably some Disney star and group of people that the young girls of Gen Alpha and late Gen Z, actually no, just Gen Alpha, pawn and pine over and wish they were dating. But things look a little different when you're a fan of somebody these days than what they were, specifically in the One Direction fandom. Let me set the scene. One Direction's first album came out in 2010 or 2011, one of them, and their last one was in 2015. Those 5 years were some of the most chaotic, frustrating, yet developmental years of my life. So naturally, anytime when I think about that time of my life, I'm going to feel a little nostalgic. So since we're feeling nostalgic, let me explain what it was like to be a One Direction fan. We were fed every year, new album every year. Social media was becoming a more prominent thing. And because of this, it was a lot easier to engage and connect with people that liked the same things you liked. It's like, hey, you have One Direction fan or Directioner in your bio. Let's be friends. There used to be a sense of community when it came to being a fangirl that we don't have anymore. And I think a part of me thinks that it's because there's so many more micro public figures that it's hard to keep up with how famous is somebody. There's too many celebrities to know, da 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 da. But there used to be actual community building and engagement within the fans that you just don't see anymore when it comes to the kids fangirling. I mean, you probably do see it. I definitely feel like you definitely see it in K-pop communities as well. Predominantly, actually, probably some of the only communities that you will see that in. And I'm not really into K-pop personally, so I can't speak too much on that. So let me know how that like circle / community kinds of goes, because I feel like K-pop is the closest thing that we get to the most modern example of a fangirl to date post One Direction breakup. Community was such a big part of being a fangirl back in the 2010s. It honestly makes me sad that a lot of people who are fans of artists and musicians, they don't really connect with people online anymore about these people that they love and they share interests with and spend money on. And it's honestly kind of sad. I remember starting my YouTube channel when I was 11, seeing the O2L house and being like, I feel like a odd person out because a lot of the people around me don't like the same things I like. So I'm going to make friends and connect with people online to see if I can find somebody to fill that void. That was the inner fangirl in me because nobody around me really liked the things I liked. I mean, everybody kind of had like very common interests when it came to music and fashion, but sometimes there are just things that you cannot find common ground on with people at your school and at your bus stop. And that's okay. It's normal. You don't have to get along or have the same interest as everybody around you. But the fact that I looked towards the internet to find community based on things that I liked, I set the groundwork. Especially for TikTok. That's why people be posting on TikTok, finding community. That's what I was doing. That's what people were doing back in the day. They were getting on social media, posting their little opinions, news updates, whatever, for community purposes. And it's crazy that we've come so full circle back to that. It honestly makes me very happy. It took a decade, but here we are. With the internet being such a prominent thing within modern / 2010s internet fangirl culture, we began seeing some shifts. Now, I'm pretty sure everybody can agree that Justin Bieber was really the first big celebrity to deal with internet fame because he was founded on the internet. The internet was really coming up when he first started coming out. We had a YouTube, Twitter, MySpace was kind of in its last couple days, if I'm remembering properly. But like the internet was like his oyster. And a lot of people did not take him seriously because of his fame and attention on the internet. And then he became and still is one of the most famous celebrities of our time. You say Justin Bieber, everybody knows who you're talking about. That's a household name. And it all started because of the internet. But the internet is not what it used to be. I'm pretty sure we all know that the internet is not what it used to be. So with the internet developing and rapidly changing, we're getting new apps like Snapchat and Instagram and Vine, and things are coming up. People are starting to realize the internet is a huge place and there's a lot of personalities on here, but there's also a lot of information. Enter stage left, where the fandom started losing their minds. There was a level of delirium that one had to have to be a directioner. There had to be at least one screw loose in the head when it came to being a directioner. We were so in love with those boys. People were writing fan fiction with like hundreds of chapters, making you the main character in a One Direction story. If my mom watches this, skip over this part, babes. I was in 5th grade reading the most insane things on Wattpad after hours. That wasn't my friend that night. It was the devil. Like, it was insane. I learned what sex was through Wattpad. Let me say that again. I learned what sex was through Wattpad. I was in the 5th grade reading the Harry Styles fan fiction after. And if the real girlies know, that was actually a really well-written fan fiction. It really was. Shout out to that girl who had that show developed after her fan fiction. Tessa, shout out to you, boo. Because that was great. That was fantastic. We were writing and reading and engaging with fan fiction because we could not get enough of these boys. Mind you, Directioners were already more fed than the average casual fangirl, because this was when the internet was popping off and we started getting more stuff that involved video content, photo content. Like I said, we got Instagram, we got Snapchat, we got YouTube. One Direction was posting video. There was so much content thrown at us in such a little amount of time. And don't say you got on the One Direction bandwagon late, because girl, you had to play catch up. There were video diaries. The boys made vines. Like, it was a lot. It was so parasocial. I think that was my first ever extreme parasocial experience in my life. And honestly, I'm glad that I had the limited access to social media as I did, because if I had Twitter, I think I would have been a different person 100%. Not only were people writing these really vulgar fan fictions, and to this day, I always want to know if the boys, 1, knew about it. They had to know about it. But 2, did they read any of it and think, hey, they're insane, let me back up a bit? And that's why we started getting less and less content from them as the years went on. But the damage was already done, baby. Okay? So not only were we getting these super vulgar fan fiction pieces that were like detailed, graphic, like insane, like young adult smut, like fan written young adult smut for free on Wattpad. Not only were we doing that, but then remember how I said people realized the internet was a tool? Enter stage right, people tracking celebrities' locations. I think seeing people swarm Justin Bieber's hotels when he was a young teenager altered my brain in ways that I didn't understand, and I couldn't differentiate and see how that was wrong when it happened. So when I got word that people were hacking into airport security cameras to get footage of the One Direction boys, I didn't blink an eye. I was asking for a link. And this is when things get dangerous, because not only were people starting to lose their minds, not only did things start to get a little, okay, the fan fiction's a little weird, but also now it's a security issue. Do you know how intricate it is to hack airport security cameras, federal government property, to get videos of your faves? I don't think we talk about that enough. I really don't think that we talk about that enough. What do you mean it was teenage girls hacking into airport security cameras to get videos of One Direction waiting on the plane? We were deranged, literally deranged. But honestly, I'm not going to lie. I have to remember that the boys were like their late teens, mid-late teens / early 20s by the time they broke up. So they probably ate this attention up. Teenage boys are insane, but also that's no environment for a teenage boy to be in. First of all, they knew who they were. They knew who they were. Why do you think to this day people make fan edits of wishing that they were one of the girls that went on a two-man with Zayn and Harry? Because they used to do that. Yup. Do you want to know how they know that? Because people gained access to the phone calls of Zayn and Harry calling the hotel lobby and gave them a name to let that girl up to their floor. Mental illness, but make it directioner chic. This is when I think, nothing about this is healthy. Nothing about this is healthy whatsoever. Honestly, like I said, Zayn, I understand why he left. The amount of racism that he endured and had to deal with. Endeared is not the word. The amount of racism that he had to deal with / take on because he was the only non-white man in that group would have been more than enough to make me leave. Knowing that I'm all the talent and all the face, babe, I'm gone. I'm gone. I'm gone. Been gone. Good luck. And then we saw how that album came out without him. It's a good album, but it's a hole missing because Zayn isn't there. Just when you think things couldn't get any worse. So after a few years of dealing with the racism, people losing their minds, I'm not even going to get into the CUT for Zayn when he left because I am not digging into that. I'm so glad I did not have to see that live at the ripe age of 11 or 12, 13. What do you know? For demonetization purposes, we're not going to touch on it, but that in itself should tell you how bad things got. And Zayn, you're real because anybody else in your position would have got forever ago. And the way you held out and dealt with all that madness is completely above me. So kudos to you for leaving. Even though you've been wanted to, I'm glad that you did what you had to do to get yourself up out of that situation. You had to put you first. So, we know Zayn leaves One Direction March 25th of 2015. It's quiet. We don't really have many boy bands coming out of the shadows and being found from singing shows anymore. Fun fact, One Direction actually came, I think it was in 3rd or 4th of the X Factor, yet they were the most famous people to come out of it because everybody fell in love with them. Their personalities. Were they the most talented? Hell no. Hell no. Watch Louis Tomlinson's Hey There Delilah audition and get back to me. Quickly. It was a mess. But after One Direction broke up, there was a shift. Like I said, 2016 came very quickly. And this is when the internet started to take form and look more like the internet we know today. Honestly, having One Direction split right in the middle of the 2010s felt like the turn of a new era. And we began seeing that as time went by, like using the gift of retrospection, but things felt different. We approached social media differently. We started approaching our relationships and fashion and beauty and all those standards differently. And as time went on, the concept of a fangirl started to disappear. And we started getting the third phase of this lifestyle. Stan culture. One of the worst things to happen to us, and although I identify as a One Direction fan, current occupation directioner, it really started with them. It really started with them. The whole fangirl concept is cute until it's not. And then because everything for the internet is performative, it had to get taken back up some more, had to get taken up some more notches and turned into something diabolical, also known as stan culture. If you aren't aware of what a stan is or stan culture, there's actually a full sub corner of Twitter, Stan Twitter. scared. Couldn't pay me to go over there. I don't want to. Think of a fangirl cracked out. When you're a stan of somebody, not only are you getting the news and updates, not only are you showing up at the hotels that they're staying, not only are you spending your time, money, and emotional, well-being on these people, emotional tax on these people, that's what you're paying for. You're also starting to argue with people when they don't like your faves. Enter stage left, the first real stan group I think we've all seen, the Barbs. I will not say anything ill about these people for my personal safety, but the first real stan group I remember seeing post One Direction were the Barbs. They were a force to be reckoned with. So not only did we have the parts of the One Direction fandom behavior, but now we're adding in, if you don't like my faves, you're stupid and have worms for brains. You say anything bad about their faves, you're getting doxxed. Listen to that statement. We went from a few people meeting the One Direction boys outside of their hotel during their X Factor days, because they usually stayed in the same place, or they went to the studio, but that was like a local thing. It was very tame. We went from that to people writing smutty fan fiction, to hijacking airport security, to knowing and showing up where these people live, to, you know what? I can't do this stuff physically, so if you don't like my fave, doxed. How did we go from showing up at the studio with 2 or 3 other people, and that's the only people that are out there, to, I'm going to dox you if you say anything bad about my favorite artist? A part of me, I do this thing where I try to give people the benefit of the doubt. And I want to say, I don't know how we got here, but then I would be lying to not only you, but myself. Because the internet started becoming a huge part of the culture, social media is officially booming. We are starting to see some of the very first influencers on Vine. Were they making money? No, I don't think so. But we saw some of the very first influencers on Twitter and Vine. We had celebrities engaging with us on a very hey, we're acting like neighbors right now level. Everything was fun until it wasn't. And it's because there is this certain behavior that I noticed a lot of people, not even behavior, there's this thing that a lot of people, my generation, specifically Gen Z, do. And it's called being very polarizing. Being polarizing is the act in which there's no in between. When you have a polarizing opinion, it's like you're firm. There's no gray area, black and white. Either it is or it isn't. And with the rise of the internet, we're seeing influencers, content creators, celebrities are in our faces more. Anybody can start getting famous on the internet. It started to create this world of everybody started talking. Everybody's talking. And mind you, I played a part in this because this was my career at this point. We're talking about the 2017 to 2019 era. Everybody started talking. Everybody had a camera. Everybody started talking. Everybody's on Dub Smash, And because I think everybody started talking, people began to realize, oh my God, people have a perception of me. So I need to say something, and when I say it, I stand on it. So people understand me and don't get confused whenever the vibe, that basically people are being perceived and they know they're being perceived. And it's easier to have a firm standpoint on something than something that involves nuance and gray area, because that's too confusing for the people you're speaking to. And I honestly don't know where this polarization of nuanced takes and ideologies came from, but it's very, 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 very damaging. It's very damaging. Everything in life, I was going to say, is not black and white, but that's clearly not even true, because there's a right and there's a wrong. But even then, our opinions on said rights and wrongs are going to shift based on person to person and experience to experience. Being polarizing simplifies things to a degree that make things out to be simple when 95% of things are not simple. Like I said, everybody knows that there's rights and there's wrongs. For example, being an adult into children is wrong. Everybody knows it's wrong, except the people. Hell, they even know it's wrong, yet they still do it. We have laws that say, hey, don't do that because this is wrong and can be dangerous, and because this is a rule. For example, running red lights. Running red lights, they're not necessarily wrong, but it's something you usually probably shouldn't do for your safety, because driving cars is actually very dangerous. We all know that. Yet people still run red lights and get in accidents. We're told running red light bad. Yet it's still people who do it, and then it raises the question, well, why did you run it? Oh, my wife's water broke. Oh, it was a medical emergency. Oh, I was on my phone, I didn't see. Does it still make it something that we should do? Was it warranted? Wait, body kind of tea. Wait. Yeah, sorry. Anyway. Sorry. I have my Skims dress on, if anybody's wondering. Nobody's wondering. Audio listeners, you can't even see this. You saw in the thumbnail, though. Shout out to the YouTube girlies. I love you down. Mwah. So, I think because naturally, the progression of social media led to more polarizing behavior. That led to people being more firm in their beliefs. They're standing 10 toes down. If you don't agree with me, you have to go. Serena Vanderwoodson, I have to go. And that is where I think the art of the average fangirl got lost. It's because the internet was introduced. The internet was introduced, and we have never been normal fangirls since. Also, I'm going to put my sunglasses back on for a second because I want y'all to see how committed I was to the bit. It's giving funeral chic. I look like the 3 blind mice from Shrek. We are gathered here today to talk about Zayn leaving One Direction and where fangirling went as a culture and lifestyle, and it's because the internet doesn't know how to exist on a normal level, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, I just wanted to show you my chic funeral outfit. I was going to wear some other glasses, but I couldn't find them. So I hope that's fine with you all, the ones I chose. But back to the topic at hand. My ear itches. Okay, back to the topic at hand. Because the internet, we are never going to be allowed to have a regular relationship with the art of fangirling ever again. In my mom's younger years, she had the Jackson 5 New Edition, and they watched their music videos when they were scheduled to come on TV. They would buy their CDs. They would wear the clothes that they were wearing, but they were at a reasonable distance because that veil between celebrity and regular civilian had not been very see-through. You weren't on the same level as a celebrity at the time. And then, as we saw stars like Justin Bieber and a bunch of other celebrities from Disney Channel get more on social media, that veil became a little bit more opaque. Not a lot. The opacity dropped a little bit, Because now we're seeing these people outside of their natural realms, such as concerts, talk shows, interviews. And as we pierce the veil even more and really put the nail in the coffin, we were introduced to social media where we shared common space with the people who were at a point completely unreachable, but are now at the tips of our fingers via Instagram comments, Twitter replies, DMs, Snapchat. And that's where it went downhill. Because now these celebrities are able to give, at the time, most of the time, a lot of the time, close to real-time updates and posting what they were thinking about and what was bothering them and them getting their makeup done. We all saw King Kylie. She ran Snapchat, okay? Kyizzle my nizzle. Somebody needs to get hit for that. But, like, we remember Kyizzle. We remember Jay Bizzle. Like, wow. The race snatching of it all. Another topic for another day. But when celebrities started to become more accessible to us and becoming a celebrity became more attainable because the first couple influencers and content creators started coming about when social media was coming up, like with Vine, that's when things started to go off the rails. Because people started to think that, oh, I know this person. No, you don't. Mind you, this was a time before everybody kind of knew what parasocial behavior was. So you could get away with being like, oh, I genuinely feel like I know this person. And honestly, to an extent, I think parasocial relationships are fine when they are managed and dealt with in a healthy way. I think they're fine to an extent because at the end of the day, you are spending time with somebody for hours a week. For example, y'all see me for an hour every week on the podcast, and that doesn't even count if you watch my TikToks or see my Instagram stories or watch my YouTube videos when I post them. I'm giving and extending a hand out to you to be a part of my life. So naturally, you're going to care about me and feel like you know me because at the end of the day, you do to an extent. Do I overshare nearly as much as I did when I was a teenager? Absolutely not. For my safety and sanity. But do I still share parts of myself with thousands of people like on a weekly basis? Absolutely. I think when there are clear boundaries and patterns put into place that people, and tools as well, that are put into place that people can use in order to engage with their faves on social media in a healthy, non-invasive way, I think it's cool. I think it's fine, actually. But when we start to lose the plot with me is when people feel like they are obligated and have a obligation to said person's time, personal space, their life, etc., etc. Because at the end of the day, we do post to be seen. No matter what anybody says, I don't post to be seen, da, da, da. Unless your accounts are all on private and you generally are the only person tapped onto that page, 0 followers, you're not following anybody, we're posting to be seen. Because we want to connect with and find that community. That's what the internet was originally for. Everybody wants to be seen that's posting to an extent. You want to be seen if you're posting. When it gets iffy is when, like I said, I lost my train of thought. They feel like they're obligated to your time and that they have like it's slipping my mind, the term right now. What's the term? It's not obligation. It's slipping my mind really bad right now. I apologize. But yeah, when people feel like they are owed parts of your life because of the time that they put into you and tapping into you and supporting you, that's when you lose me. That's when you lose me. And because the rise of the influencer and content creator culture, because people do overshare a lot, me included, I did it at a point. I definitely have weaned back a lot. because we've seen that normal people can get on the internet and share what they want and duck off, people started to feel like, hey, I gave you 6 hours of my week last week watching you stream, watching your videos, watching you TikToks, dances, whatever. That one thing that you brought up 5 times and haven't talked about in 6 months, what about that? You brought it to the internet, so of course people are going to ask you about it. And I can go in and out and all about people feeling like they have a responsibility / obligation to know what's going on in somebody's life just because they said something once and you posted on the internet. Of course people are going to ask about it. Yes, that is true, but there's a very nuanced conversations to have about that in terms of personal safety, reeling back in, understanding that, hey, they probably don't want to talk about it. Hey, it's a very nuanced conversation we could potentially get into another day. But at the end of the day, I don't think we're ever going to be able to go back to a sense of normal level of fangirling because we've been shown that the veil between celebrity, average person, and influencer is so thin. You can pierce it with a dull pencil. It makes no sense. It's rappers DMing pretty girls on TikTok and Instagram, hey, can I take you out? The average person could literally potentially be asked out by an A, B, C list celebrity. There's influencers on the Met Gala carpet and at the Oscars. It's like the worlds have become so blended together. It has created a sense of we're all on the same level, and we are, because we are humans at the end of the day. But I think because we have so much access to each other now, it makes it feel like it almost makes it feel like that veil that was once there between celebrity and regular human being, which that's a way to describe it, but that's the best way I can describe it. That veil kept the sense of, I'm a fan of you for X, Y, and Z up. Because the more we share, the more we know about each other, the less special I think fangirling is. And I think the thing that really made fangirling fun was because 1, the boys were cute. 2, they made good music. 3, we had community building and people were talking about their albums. People were finding the community, which I think is always the best part about being a fangirl or being in any type of fandom. But I think the thing that made that able to be a thing was because we didn't have as much access to these celebrities. We didn't have that much access. Simple as that. Now I feel like, you know how people say a crush is only a lack of information? That same thing applies to being a fangirl. Being a fangirl is a lifestyle. It's a way of life. It's a way of living. No matter what you say I'm being dramatic, I don't care. It is. You're giving time, money, and giving yourself emotionally to these strangers, right? But because we know so much about each other unprovoked, that veil, that lack of information that we once had is gone because we have all the information now. And it's hard to have a crush or an interest in somebody when you know every single thing about them, good, but most importantly, bad. A crush is just a lack of information. Granted, did we talk about how the directioners were hacking government federal cameras on property to get videos of the boys? Yes, but at the end of the day, we did not really know them. We got a lot of content about them, clearly, if we're hacking cameras at the airport, but we didn't really know that much about them. Liam's scared of spoons. Louis likes carrots. Harry worked at a bakery. Zayn is vain. And Niall, turn his mic on. And honestly, I could really tie this into the loneliness epidemic, and I'm going to try to make it make sense really quickly because this entire episode has been off the dome. I don't have my cue cards in my hand. But I think because we have such a access to information, it's hard to develop a crush or feel like you can fan out over celebrities, is because just when you think you like somebody, you learn something new about them and it makes you not like them anymore. And that really ties into this new type of thing, this polarizing thing that Jay-Z, God, no. Gen Z does, that if you do one bad thing, you're cut. They run strict programs, but not in like a I have boundaries type of way, but in a I refuse to deal with conflict and I don't want to deal with conflict. So it's easier to keep somebody around that I potentially, it's actually easier to get somebody out of my life that I genuinely care about than deal with the conflict of that. Gen Z is so non-confrontational. Non-confrontational, yet the most polarizing group of people you've ever met. But honestly, that kind of checks out. And this all ties into the loneliness epidemic because since we don't have that veil anymore between celebrity and civilian. I mean, we're all civilians, but celebrity and non-celebrity, we now feel like we have access to everybody, yet no one is there. Because just because you have more options does not mean you have more options. The options are a delusion. We talked about this in another podcast episode, which I'll link in the top right corner for you if you did not check it out. We talked about how social media has changed our relationships. It was my Valentine's Day episode. And I talk a little bit about how people think because they have more options, it's better. And people think they have options, the illusion of an option. But in reality, we're as lonely as ever. You have access to millions of people at the tips of your fingers, like at your fingertips. Yet we're as lonely as ever. We're in a loneliness epidemic. You know why? Because having more access does not mean you are going to have higher chances of achieving something that you were looking for. For example, a relationship, a fandom to be a part of. Because of this polarizing and isolating culture that Gen Z has taken part of, and I've seen literally formulate in front of me as I've grown up over the past year and grown up on the past years and grown up on social media since I was a kid, it's honestly disturbing how isolating and polarizing things have gotten. And I think it really started post One Direction. Leave it to me to tie everything to One Direction. Like I said, we had the community building. We had the sense of being a villager in a village. We were making friends. And then they broke up and people started to change. Social media changed. It was the midpoint of the decade. And it's so disheartening because I feel like young girls now just don't really have anybody to look forward to / fangirl that was as big as One Direction. Like, yeah, we had our One Direction, our Mindless Behavior, Justin Bieber, Beatles even, whatever, NSYNC, whatever. But they don't really have anybody that was that famous. I feel like they don't have any headlining A-list celebrities that everybody knows and is a household name, because there's so many people on the internet that are quote unquote famous now, and to an extent are, but because the internet has such a endless supply of people, we don't really know A from B. Somebody could be walking down the street that got 10 million followers. I don't know. Because social media has turned eyes into what was once currency to something that we just kind of expect from people now. And I think that is my argument. That's my argument. Fangirling truly is a lost art. A sense of normal fangirling is a form of lost art. Every day I mourn who I was when One Direction was still together, because there was a sense of belonging that we just don't see anymore because we've become so isolated and distant, and people think that caring or being too big of a fan is cringe. God forbid you have an interest and you express that interest. Now you're just overly interested in doing want. Like, what are we talking about? It was fun to be a fangirl in my teens, and now We can't even say that we really like something on the internet without potentially being shred to pieces. We're losing recipes. And it's honestly making me really sad. If you ever feel like you have like an empty hole in your heart, just find something to fangirl about. You want to know whenever I'm happiest? It's a March/April spring day. I can go outside, roll my windows down in my car. I can go to the park, or I can walk around the city whenever I'm in New York, because I do go that often to the point where I'll be strutting around. And I have my wired headphones on, and I'm listening to artists that I once devoted time and money and emotions into. I tap back into what I'm a fangirl for. One Direction, Ariana Grande, Michael Jackson. It's some people I don't play about. And whenever I'm at my happiest, 9 times out of 10, I am engaging in media that involves people and pieces of art that I be fangirling over. Twilight, The Hunger Games. Like, it doesn't have to stop at musical artists. So if you're feeling like your life is just like sad, dreary, there's a hole in your heart, you feel empty, find something to fangirl over. Spider-Man comes out this summer. Yes, I saw the trailer. Yes, I ate it up. And I've been fangirling over the trailer. My Spider-Man love has never died in my life, but it's been reigniting this love that I have for Spider-Man, and I'm fangirling over Spider-Man again. I am reigniting my Sinner's love, which I'm going to do a full podcast episode on soon, very soon, because I think it deserves it. We're about to approach the 1 year mark that it came out, so it's like, why not? Being able to engage in media unapologetically is what made me happiest when I was a kid. And what robbed me of that was the overexposure to people and critique and perception from others. That's what killed it. That's what killed it right there. Point blank, period. Nothing after that. Because of that, people do not like to be overly excited or engaged or invested in artists or pieces of media anymore because it's seen as cringy or you're doing too much. But in reality, the people like me who engage and fangirl over their favorite artists and movies and shows and books and whatnot and whatever you're into, we're happy. We're happy. And that's all I could ever really ask for. So next time you say, I feel empty, go find something to fangirl about and tell me how empty you feel then. Yep. That's my advice for the day. If you're empty, go find something to fangirl about, please. So with that being said, that has been this week's episode of Predictably Unpredictable. It definitely was a longer solo episode because, girl, we are at that hour mark and that is insane. But I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. I would love to hear your takes on where you think the art of fangirling and just fangirling culture took a turn. What are some of your earliest memories of being a fangirl? And honestly, I know not everybody identifies as a girl, but that's the term that is like, people are like, oh, I'm a fangirl. I know they like introduce fanboy and whatnot, but I feel like fangirl is definitely still like the standard. But let me know your earliest memories of fanboying and fangirling over celebrities, where you think it changed, and who is to blame for it. I would love to hear your take on that. And I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode, like I just said 2 seconds ago. And if you did, make sure you tune in every single Wednesday for Predictably Unpredictable, because that's every time I post episodes every single Wednesday. It's every time I post. You can catch me at 12 p.m. Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific, and you can stream on YouTube. You can listen on Spotify, and I am so happy I got to sit and hang out with y'all this week, because it's honestly the highlight of my week, where I just get to brain dump a lot of the time and really just get my thoughts out and really go in depth with things that I feel like I can't really do anywhere else. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for tuning in, and thank you so much for the support on the pod up until this point and into the future points, because girl, y'all have been killing it with tapping in, and thank you so much for that. And once again, thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Predictably Unpredictable. I have been your host, Aliyah, and I cannot wait to see you on the next one. Bye, guys. Bye. Love you so much. I sound like Zayn. So we'll piss off the neighbor. Yep. Right.